All right, so the first question today is going to be to Gemma. It's your character Polly has an interesting dynamic. Can you tell us a little bit about her and why you wanted to play her?
As soon as I read the script, I absolutely just loved Polly. I thought she was just so cool and not what I expected. She brings a real dose of, warmth and humor and care. She cares for everybody. She's really the kind of the matriarch of the family, and all these lads, all these tough lads, they do need a shoulder to cry on every now and then. So she is that, but she also is, she's tough and she's strong, and she's the sort of brains behind the operation, really. As we learn about the Kingsman Agency, we really see that she sort of manages it and is very integral to the running of it. So she's just a great character, and I love playing her.
What was the most fun about playing in a period film that also had the action and spectacle of the Kingsman films?
I mean, the fact that this is a period film sets it apart from the original Kingsman films and brings a real sense of there's a weightiness to it, as at times a seriousness because of the events themselves being incredibly serious. But it was really fun to juxtapose that with the Kingsman style, with the fun and the humor and the kind of at times zaniness of the Kingsman world. And I loved that. It was a really nice thing to play, actually, because even when you're playing someone from a different period, you do have to keep in mind that people were different and they had a different way of behaving and relating to things. So having that sense of kind of that very modern sense of Matthew Vaughn's films within that was kind of quite a challenge. But somehow we all pulled it off, I think, because of Matthew Vaughn being such a great director. So yeah, that's what I loved.
What kind of training did you have to pull off the shooting sequences?
So I did have a little bit of training with an amazing guy that trained Harris and I, called Tony, he was ex-military, like serious, like paramilitary actually, and he sort of was brought on to make us look legit. So with the weapons and the way that we handled them, I remember him saying, I can always tell in a film when people are running around with a gun like this and their finger on the trigger, I can tell when it's not legit. So I'm very grateful to him for training me. But also, they have an amazing stunt team on the Kingsman films, and they really are the top guys. And they trained everyone extensively, and there was very sort of defined and well thought out choreography to do. So yeah, we all worked. We all had our own individual things that we were learning. Mine was marksmanship and working with pistols and rifles. But yeah, it's good fun. Loved it.
Tell us about working with director Matthew Vaughn and his style.
Yeah, well, it was such an amazing experience working with Matthew Vaughn. I've been such a huge fan of his for many years, so I was anxious to know what it would be like to work with him. I was a bit nervous, but I didn't need to be, because he's a great person to work with. He's very collaborative. He was always very, he really wanted to know my take on Polly. I think, he was very up for me contributing further, and yet at the same time has absolutely in his mind the whole film. I think he's a very visual director that has that ability to see cuts and how he's going to edit the thing and what it will look like. And so, for me personally, I was so grateful for that, because you really felt like you could trust in him and his vision. So it was just a joy, really, from start to finish.
Your character, Conrad, exemplifies the idealism of the era. What makes Conrad tick, and what did you like best about playing him?
Wow, great question. I think that You know, I think at that time in history, everyone was certainly my character's age were going off and joining the British military and kind of being defined by their bravery, and I think being held back by his father's ideals and pacifism is something that deeply frustrates him, you know, and I think that's one of the first things I, as an actor, latched onto, you know, and tried to sort of find the role through is that frustration and that desire to want to discover the world for yourself, and yeah, it was an interesting sort of dynamic between Rafe and I, so I enjoyed that.
What was the most fun about playing in a period film that also had the action and spectacle of the Kingsman films?
Yes, sorry. Well, it's not every. Well, you know, I think I was very lucky in the sense that I got to have these very dramatic scenes with Rafe and Gemma and Djimon, but also get to go off and do the action as well. And I think there's not many projects where you have that. So just I was kind of spoiled in that regard. Yeah.
Can you tell us about filming the battle scenes in the trenches, and how realistic was it, and how did you feel about it?
Well, I guess I'll start. You know, it was very realistic. Matthew and the whole construction team, the art department, the set deck, they really went to town on all of those scenes. They transformed like an airfield in the English countryside into trenches, and you know, it was all there. It had all been built. So I really didn't have to. I didn't have to wander far in terms of imagination. So, yeah, I think with those sort of scenes, you just try and. There's so many elements, and they have multiple cameras, and there's like explosions and timings, and it is quite scary. It becomes more than just. You notice how switched on your mind is in those moments because you have so many things to remember, and if you mess up or you go at the wrong time or you don't hit your mark, you know, there's 20 other elements that are going to be affected by it. So I think it just really forces you to be be focused in those moments, you know.
And let's see, next one. This is going to also be to both of you. It's tell us about working with director Matthew Vaughn and his style.
Just going off of what Gemma just said as well, I think Matthew, he's incredibly impressive. You know, he takes risks within this genre, and I felt like he put a lot of trust in me to portray the role, and he was really sort of kind and caring with it. And I think at the size of a film like this and the amount going on, he was also such an important presence of, you know, keeping everyone calm and just like having assurance in your director is so important. So yeah, it was great.
We'll start with you, Djimon. What appealed to you about the role of Shola?
What appealed to me about the role of Shola is the idea of fundamentally wanting to work with Matthew Vaughn. I thought, you know, I had met with him almost a little over a decade ago, and I thought, you know, seeing a number of his directorial work, and was excited to work with him, and of course Kingsman came about. The original story of the Kingsman came about, and this idea of a fantasy meets a history was just beautiful, and yeah, it was a no-brainer for me to join the team. An amazing ensemble cast.
Perfect. And Rhys, what attracted you to this project and made you want to play Rasputin?
What attracted me to this project was, first and foremost, the name Matthew Vaughn. He's someone whose work I've always admired and loved, and I never thought I'd have the opportunity to work with him, so I was thrilled when this opportunity came about. And to play a figure, a historical figure like Rasputin, in a historical satire, drama, comedy, whatever you want to call it, I knew, you know, he's an extraordinary figure anyway, so that was amazing. But I was just really intrigued and excited to see what would happen to him pushed through a Matthew Vaughn kind of sausage machine. And Matthew, you know, hasn't disappointed. He's come up with it's a very specific, shall we say, Rasputin that could only exist in the Kingsman world, but does refer solidly to the real guy who was himself a fantastical figure.
Djimon, how does Shola fit into the story?
How does Shola fit into the story? We meet Shola early in the story when we're with the Duke of Oxford in Africa, where Shola sort of like early on witnessed the dramatic loss of the wife of our story, and also having the son, father and son emotional drama played out the way it played out. Of course, Shola upon sort of like having an affinity with the Duke of Oxford, came all the way to Europe with him, and as a result he became an instrumental part of the creation of the first independent secret agency.
Rhys, can you talk about how Rasputin is characterized and how he plays out in the story? And does he follow history in any way?
Yes, well, how Rasputin manifests in this film is very exciting. Rasputin himself was a figure who loomed large over Russia, and still after his death, decades later, he still looms large. He was a huge physical presence, a hypnotic presence, a subversive, dangerous, repulsive, attractive, divisive figure. You know, that list of words alone is an exciting prospect for any actor, you know, and to view or to bring someone like Rasputin to life through the prism of a Matthew Vaughn film is very exciting, you know, and in this case Rasputin has to enter the film, or has to have the presence of a looming weather system, if you like, on the narrative. He is a collection of hundreds of storm clouds that's suddenly kind of gather over Oxford when he comes to St. Petersburg. So yes, you can bend the rules and twist the rules and magnify elements of Rasputin, but really, you know, everything I do in the film is rooted in authenticity. In terms of who Rasputin was, you know, he ate like a wolf. He didn't use cutlery. Crowds would gather to watch him eat. He was hypnotic. He was powerful. He was a healer, arguably. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lasted so long in the Russian court. And he found himself in a position of power in Russia and the world that could literally start or end wars. So all those bits are exciting. The departure for us is that in the film he has a physical language that, without question, the real Rasputin didn't have, or any human being come to that. And that's a wonderful kind of Matthew Vaughn addition to the Rasputin we have in this film.
Could you both speak a little bit about the physical training you did for this film?
Speak about the physical training. It was physical, to say the least. It was a lot. Did not expect that. I mean, I certainly went on the Matthew Vaughn's film thinking, well, you know, this will be, you know, at the level of all the other films, action films that I've done before. So I didn't really think much of it until really starting to get really difficult to play, sort of like work within the choreography of the action, you know, sequence that we had, and it came with a certain level of pain, you know, because it was just difficult to, yeah, the physicality was quite challenging.
And if you both had one word to describe the film, what would it be?
Well, what a journey, what a ride, what a...
One word, we only allowed one word.
One word, pick wisely.
Epic. Yes, epic.
Hysteria.
Hysteria. There you go.
What do you hope audiences take away from the film?
Oh wow, a new look onto the Kingsman, a new look in story, a new look in action, a new look in obviously using the you know, this as a backstory. I mean, his story as a backstory was also quite fun and educational, for that matter, and so yeah.
I hope audiences, after everything we've been through as a species for the last 2 years, the lockdowns, the vaccines, the rules, the regulations, the great loss, the changes, that we flock back to the cinema and be entertained, thoroughly entertained and moved and thrilled in a crowd of people sitting together watching a light source, gathering around a light source to receive a story and leaving, even if they didn't arrive, leaving hand in hand, arm in arm, saying, honey, it's great to be out again, isn't it?
It wasn't always in the works. We were planning on making Kingsman 3 while shooting Kingsman 2, and then I watched The Man Who Would Be King, and it just reminded me of everything that I fell in love with cinema for, and decided, let's make The Man Who Would Be Kingsman. And that came together quicker than I would ever imagine, because we had the storyline written in Kingsman 1 when Eggsy is speaking to Harry, or Harry even speaking to Eggsy, telling him the story of how, why, and when Kingsman was founded. And World War I obviously was written as well, so we just had to take the speech of Harry, take history, bring the things together, and I was lucky enough to then have a movie which I was desperate to go make. And we will make Kingsman 3 next. Well, hopefully we make Kingsman 3 next, which concludes the story between Eggsy and Harry, and then we can delve straight into The King's Man 2, or maybe we'll even call it The King's Men. so I can decide that. That will take the characters from here on their first journey as the Kingsman Agency is now founded. So we've got, in theory, decades now of history, of real history, a secret history, the history of espionage, shown through the eyes of the Kingsman. So that will be this franchise. And then after the Eggsy and Harry story is concluded, there's a lovely ending, which would then make it a Kingsman 4 will become something that people probably couldn't imagine right now until they see in Kingsman 3. And if those go well enough, we thought it'd be fun to do a Loki-style spin-off of The Statesman, but do that as a TV/streaming offshoot of the Kingsman. But I've always imagined if it's got the name The Kingsman or Kingsman in the title, that's theatrical, and then spin-offs can be more of the streaming. I think it's more, how does revisionist and unreal history weave into the real history? It would be my answer to that. How does it fit in? It's shoehorned in. It's, you know, we can't change history, we can't change facts, but we can find the gray area where people can't explain what happened or why it happened, and just sneak a little bit of the Kingsman wink, charm, or raised eyebrow into those scenarios. Yes, we did a lot of research for the whole of World War I and the trenches, and the more we got to, or more I got to understand and see what the trenches were, the more shocking it was and sort of unbelievable, which then made us decide to build the trenches, because I just felt a CG version of it would never capture the true horror of the place. And we just decided to shoot it in, it's sort of ironic because, you know, I say we shot it in sort of the epic style that as a kid I grew up on, but, you know, which was sort of the David Lean, John Huston style of, you know, proper wide shots and long lenses, and trying to use real, you know, obviously using extras, not sprites. And we just tried to capture it in a way where it was accessible to a modern audience, but inspired by the old-fashioned way of making movies, but we didn't want to make an old-fashioned film. I wanted to make a modern version of an old-fashioned film. A story is a story. So when you tell a story, and you're true to the story, everything will fall into place around being honest to the story. So the action sequences we based on the reality of the story and the characters that we were saying. So Rasputin gave me the leeway to go a little bit more crazy, but we based it all on facts of how the ballet dancing, the Cossack dancing, Tchaikovsky, all these Russian influences we could put into him. But likewise, when Conrad goes to war, then I had to respect the storytelling and of going to war in World War I, so therefore it became more real, and we shot the trenches as the trenches were. And then at the third act, we then looked at what would happen, how do we do an action sequence with a biplane? When I found out that the biplanes back then were made out of canvas and virtually balsa wood, it seemed like that we could even virtually lift the whole thing up. I thought, so that gave me the idea of going through the wing and what that would look like spinning out of control. And then the whole mountain and the goats and the sword fighting. We took those styles. I found an old sword that did have a gun built into it in a museum. I saw that in Turin. And we took all these historical things, but then saw, okay, how do we reinvent a sword fight? Put cameras onto the blades, but also don't reinvent it. Go back to the old style of Errol Flynn and have some great sword fighting and be brave and keep the camera still, and get the actors to learn how to do it. So just to be, so the answer is the balance came from being truthful to the story and the characters, and then forging an action around that. Well, Ben Davis for me is, and his dad was, sort of the king of long lens photography. And, David Lean and, Lawrence of Arabia and these movies, they use it's quite interesting when you start using long lenses to do big wide shots. And We even rebuilt some of the lenses from Lawrence of Arabia, and we didn't shoot it on film, but Ben and I, we put the old lenses onto the modern cameras, and we used a 65 chip, which, is sort of like the equivalent of a 70mm, negative. And it just, the anamorphic on that, we then projected it, and it created that epic old school look that we wanted the movie to have. And we were just trying to be disciplined, of just respecting how these old movies were made, and we watched them all and said, let's keep it in that language for as long as possible. And then towards the end, it starts morphing a little bit more to the Kingsman way we shot things. But the first 2 acts, well, 3, I think it's a 4-act structure. So the first 3 acts, we were far more epic adventure filmmaking. And then the 4th act got a little bit more Kingsman-y, should we say. That's my main job as a director, is to cast it properly. You you cast any role correct, it doesn't matter. Then the movie's going to, the movie will work. You have to cast the role properly. Now, what I mean by that is there have been films where you put a movie star in a role, but if they weren't right for that role, it doesn't matter how big a movie star they are, it doesn't work. So I've always done that. And with the Kingsman, I needed who is that man that could play the King's man, who could rival Colin Firth and be the, who would Colin Firth have been channeling to play the Kingsman, as we know it, and even then Taron Egerton with Eggsy. What is this ethos? Where's the spirit coming from? And when we wrote the Kingsman, there was only 2 people in my mind who could play the role. One was David Niven, obvious reasons why he couldn't, and the second was Ralph Fiennes. So Ralph said yes, and knocked it out of the park. And likewise with all the other roles, like Rasputin, I knew Rhys was the man. I don't know why I did, but I knew Rhys had the depth and sort of a energy that he would bring to it, sort of a over-the-top realism. So that's why I cast him, and all the other characters. They all had I try to cast people where a little bit of them is in the role. So they're acting, but I know a bit of their core is going to add to the role. What can they expect? I think what they can be surprised. They will go on an original film. It's not a formulaic, generic movie. It's epic. It's entertaining. It's engaging. It's exciting, and it's escapism. And you'll also learn you'll learn a lot about history, but it won't be boring.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and comment on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to be notified when new videos are released.